You've been waiting for this since February 6th. Football season is here, and there's no better way to get closer to the game you love than with DraftKings 1-week fantasy football. To celebrate, DraftKings is hosting a $100,000 contest this Sunday that is totally free to enter, and if you draft the perfect lineup, you can win $1 billion. With DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. Choose between public contests with big cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against a group of your friends. That's what I do every single week. DraftKings also has beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill level. The best part is you get to draft a new team each week without any commitment. So get to DraftKings.com now and use the promo code REPLAY to play in DraftKings free contest with $100,000 in total prizes this Sunday. And if you draft the perfect lineup, you can win $1 billion. That's promo code REPLAY to play for your shot to win $1 billion this Sunday. The contest totally free to enter, so why wouldn't you try it? DraftKings, the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for all the details.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling that you're safe to enjoy the things that matter most. ADT lets you take that feeling with you, whether you're at home, your business, or online. We help keep you safe with security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling for less than $1 a day. ADT. Home. Safe home.
Well, wasn't that a surprise? The NFL's opening night party didn't go as planned. Instead, it was crashed in a big way by a stunningly explosive collection from Kansas City. Golic, I picked them to win the AFC, but I did not expect them to win last night. Alex Smith and Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill, what a performance by the Chiefs.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, listen, they give them all the credit in the world. We know how difficult it is to go to New England and get a victory there. And certainly the Patriots had the lead most of the game there. Even when Kansas City took the lead in the beginning of in the third quarter, New England still got it back, had the lead, and then the fourth quarter, it was really that. If you stayed up and watched the entire game, it was a fourth quarter explosion. They outscored the Chiefs, the Patriots, 21-0 in the fourth quarter, including the second of Alex Smith's 70-plus yard touchdown passes. So, I mean, they got it done, and as Bill Belichick, exactly right, said after the game, they got a lot of work to do. And they do have a lot of work to do, obviously, and they would anyway, whether they got the win or not. But this was not expected. You didn't expect them to lose at home. You didn't expect Tom Brady to complete 44% of his passes. You didn't expect Rob Gronkowski to only have 2 catches in this game. You knew Edelman was out. You lose Amendola. So all of a sudden you look at your third down conversion rate. It's 44% because those are guys you hit on third down, especially Edelman, and where you go forward with this. Now, Kansas City's third down rate wasn't good either. New England missed. They love to go for it on fourth downs, missing on fourth down. So what was I've read articles about when do you usually see the Patriots celebrate as much as they did before that with the huge Super Bowl inflatable trophies out on the field and the score 28-3 and the time left in the game before the comeback? And all that stuff's for the fans. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say, the players were out on the sideline watching all that, they're getting too big for their britches. People want to start to throw that into it. I'm going to give Kansas City Chiefs a whole lot of credit. And we always say there's a surprise. The Chiefs themselves aren't a surprise. They're a good team. But when a young player comes out in Kareem Hunt, a rookie, a third-round pick from Toledo, who never fumbles in college, who fumbled his first carry in the NFL and lost it, and then goes on to set all kind of records that we'll get into. That was cool to see. That was a very neat thing to see.
Yeah, I mean, there's big picture and small picture storylines coming out of this game, as I suppose there are with every game, but never more so than the first game. To me, the biggest big picture storyline, or all of them, are about Kansas City. The notion that New England is now not as good as we thought they were or anything else is ridiculous.
Let me put that real quick. New England lost home openers 3 times and went on to win the Super Bowl. They did in 2001, 2003, and 2014.
Yeah, and in 2003, was that the year they lost 31-0 to Buffalo
they
and
lost,
they made a trade?
31-0 to Buffalo.
Everyone thought that, that's it. Belichick has lost his team.
Right.
And I think they won up 14-2 that year and won the championship.
2014, though, it's recent. They lost 33-20 at Miami. Then they won the Super Bowl. So, Yeah, I'm going to not lose my mind on that one, but I am going to look at the Chiefs and say very impressive.
Yeah, to me, the big picture storylines here are mostly Kansas City related. Here's another reason why it's not so much New England. Now, look, if this starts turning into several weeks of this, then we can revisit that conversation. Right. And while I have been the loudest, certainly on this show, voice among the it has to start ending for Brady at some time soon, it's not going to go like that. Okay, this last night to me was not a sign that the Patriots are not what we thought they were. Here's the other storyline with the Patriots. The Patriots could easily win their division at 10-6. I'm not saying they're going to be 10-6.
No, I'm with you.
But they can.
Yeah.
Kansas City is the team that is in a loaded division.
Yeah, they are.
With a Denver team that has a great defense and a San Diego, they're not San Diego anymore, the Los Angeles Charger team that everyone thinks is improved, and a Raider team that could be a Super Bowl caliber team. So that's a huge road win last night for the Chiefs, and it's one that might wind up being a big factor down the road. The other factor in this is the Kansas City always, and this was one of the thinking, I wanted to pick, for those of you who weren't with us yesterday, I picked Kansas City to win the AFC. I just didn't want to pick New England. I just wanted to go another direction.
I'm with you.
And Kansas City always beats them. I mean, the truth is, if you watch these matchups, they always beat them. It was Kansas City beating them 3 years ago that set off all of the Patriots are done conversation and we're on to Cincinnati stuff 3 seasons ago. That's all about Kansas City. So this, while it's a surprise, and while those 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, unbelievable, and Tyreek Hill giving the deuces, and this kid Kareem Hunt, who, as you say, fumbled on his first carry and then set a record for most yards from scrimmage in a player's first NFL game. He had 246 yards from scrimmage, breaking the record by almost 30 yards in the whole history of the NFL. I mean, these are unexpected and unimaginable things that Belichick will get cleaned up like that.
And I think a bigger number for everybody out there is he gave you 45 fantasy points.
What a night.
I mean, incredible. It's only Le'Veon Bell they're saying had 51 in a game. Again, just to make the point, a third-round pick who they put obviously right in the mix, fumbled his first carry and lost the fumble. Everybody on the sideline getting to him saying, calm down, don't worry about it. 17 rushes, 148 yards later, 5 receptions, 98 yards later, and a couple of touchdowns there, and 1 rushing the ball, and a hellacious stiff arm a couple of times that I'll show you, highlight throughout the show. It was impressive. You got to give the O-line credit as well for the blocking. Mostly this went up the middle to the right side. He only had 1 run to the left, and by the way, it went for 58 yards. And then Alex Smith, the perpetual game-managing quarterback, is on fire with 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he is now one of this. I guess this. You say the stat, and then you say some of the names, and you're like, okay, well, maybe it's not as big as you think. Alex Smith is now 2-0 all-time head-to-head in the regular season against Tom Brady. He joins 3 other quarterbacks.
Don't tell me.
No, with multiple regular season wins without a loss to Tom Brady. There are 3 others who have multiple wins against Brady in the regular season and have never lost to him.
I'm not going to get that. They used to lose to Miami a lot.
There's one that's playing right now that we really like, quarterbacking a team out west that we really think is going to do well this year.
Is it Derek Carr?
No, Russell Wilson.
Oh, Russell Wilson.
Wilson.
Of course, he most significantly lost to him in the Super Bowl, but okay. It's a regular season.
It's a regular season. The other 2, Jake Plummer, Brian Greasy.
Okay, so I wasn't going to get those.
No, you weren't. And so that goes to say, only 3 others, but, a couple of them, not like going down, in history as some of the greatest quarterbacks. But a great performance by Alex Smith, that whole offense, without question.
Here's the other thing that came out of this last night. We talk about Kansas City and their defense. When I brought up Kansas City's defense to Herman yesterday, the first thing Herman said is they take the ball away. Well, they didn't take the ball away last night, but they had a ton of pressure on Brady. After a season in which Brady basically did not see almost any pressure all year long, they had a ton of pressure on Brady last night.
They absolutely did. They had 3 sacks. They were getting it on the corners, Cannon out at right tackle, Solder out at left tackle. They had some problems with the speed rush, and it wasn't sack. There was quicker pressure on Brady. So that they do that well. They had 3-man rushes. When they had 3-man rushes, Brady only completed 46% of his passes. Last year it was 68% of his passes. He did that. Obviously, 3-man rush, you have more back, but still, he's normally good enough to still pick you apart. Wasn't able to do that last night.
And they looked like they did a very good job, and you could break this down far better than I ever could. But even I could see, watching it, that in the early part of the game, they were rushing 3 guys and dropping all these guys into coverage. And as the game went on, they started bringing more people, and it looked like that even Brady, the great Brady, was not 100% sure where they were coming from at all times, right? They really varied up, what they were doing defensively.
They were doing a good job beating the O-line. That O-line that we talked about that had done well, especially on the edges there. Kansas City has fast edge rushers, and it showed last night, and they covered well down the field as well. And as we'll get into, could be an issue going forward with Eric Berry, their all-pro safety. It looks like he has a torn Achilles. Now, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think that's what's going to end up.
Brutal injuries.
Torn Achilles. He's going to be done for the year. Edelman already out for New England, such a big third-down guy. Amendola in the third quarter gets a head injury. He's out.
The problem, Amendola, who's a really good, he's just always hurt.
He is always hurt. Listen, that's the one thing. He is always hurt, but he gets hurt. So there's two of the major third-down threats for the New England Patriots that are gone. Dorsett, who they just got in the trade, has to come in, and he's going to have to really elevate his game now. We don't know with Amendola and the head injury. Rob Gronkowski didn't look like Gronk. He just doesn't look like...
Does he look lumbering to you?
He does. He absolutely does. Listen, this is a guy that's dealing with back surgeries and injuries and been nicked up. So you wondered how he was going to come out. Was he ever going to get back to what he was? He did. It looked lumbering, and what a kind of a turn in the beginning. They go down and score. Kansas City fumbles a ball. New England looks like they score again. A catch by Gronkowski gets overruled, called a touchdown, overruled. They go for it on fourth down. They don't make it one of the two times, and Kansas City goes down the other way, and takes advantage of that. So interesting back and forth in this one. Again, New England had the lead going, until the fourth quarter, and then they got their doors blown off there. So they were obviously in this game, but all the credit in the world goes to Kansas City.
All right, let's get this thing cranked up. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot, see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. Big numbers. It was the most points ever allowed by a Bill Belichick Patriots team, and that's 307 games, including the playoffs. Kareem Hunt, I gave you the number, 246 yards from scrimmage. Elias says the most ever in a player's first game in NFL history. And here's my favorite stat of the night. Alex Smith threw 2 touchdowns that traveled at least 30 yards in the air last night. Do you know he has never thrown more than 2 of those in any season? He threw 2 of them last night. He's never thrown more than 2 of them in any season in his career.
Well, one was evident to throw because Tyreek Hill was wide open.
So open.
Blown cover. I'll highlight that one a little later. And then the other one, man, he had to see it from the beginning when Kareem Hunt comes out of the backfield, picked up immediately by the linebacker, to which Alex Smith had to be going, okay, this is a win. As Hunt goes straight down the field, and Alex Smith just dropped it right over the top.
Here's the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs on all the big plays.
Not just how they played us, kind of how they played everybody at certain situations, and felt good with them. Like I said, Coach, I thought with timing a couple times tonight was just spot on, and then those guys making plays. You want to be, right, multidimensional. You want to be able to spread the ball vertically. You want to be able to run and pass and spread it out horizontally as well. I mean, you want to be able to be good at all these different things, right? Misdirection, inside the tackles, outside the tackles, all those things. You want to be well-rounded. I think that makes you tough to defend. Certainly, I do think we have that ability. But each week is a different challenge, right? I mean, personnel-wise, scheme-wise, next week will be a totally different challenge, and we have to try to find a way to overcome that and beat that. So just because you do it one night doesn't necessarily mean it just carries over.
It doesn't, but I'll tell you this. You can't ask for a better start to a season, with the exception of the loss of Berry, which looks like it's going to be season-long, and that's a terrible injury. But just as far as the circumstance, you get a huge road win in the conference, and now you get 10 days. You get like basically a mini bye going into your second game. So you can't ask for a better start to a season than Kansas City got last night.
And while it's only one game, you can sit there and say, okay, now we know of another weapon we have. We know what we have in Tyreek Hill, a fast individual, whether it's returns or the deep ball. You know what you have in Travis Kelce, who had, for him, a pretty pedestrian night of 5 catches, averaging only 8 yards a catch. Yet, you still know what he is. And then welcome to the NFL, Kareem Hunt. I mean, that's what happens here is you get that surprise, whether it's a surprise game, a surprise play, or a surprise player. A third-round pick running back from Toledo. That's, again, I'll say that's where you make your mark as a team. In the first round, someone's supposed to produce, even into the second round, but that third round on, do you find those players that can produce? They find a guy in the third round who never fumbled in college, fumbles his first play, and then runs roughshod over the New England defense. Again, credit to the offensive line as well, but a couple of his stiff arms were fantastic. I love the way he runs. He's solid lower body. He gets you that extra yards going forward, and he has some nice moves as well to avoid tacklers. So that was a really, really nice coming out party for him.
All right, I want to play a couple more sound bites. We have a little news coming out this morning that I want to get to as well here, so let me go through a little bit more of this. Let's give you Belichick here, and then we'll move to some other news, because Belichick, after a loss, is always particularly quiet. Here he was with his 54-second summation of his team's performance.
But we didn't really do much of anything well enough tonight to deserve to win. We gave up 42 points, stopped on 4 short yardage plays. Got to coach better, got to practice better, got to play better. We got a lot of work to do. I mean, that's obvious. So we'll have to get back to work and see if we can improve pretty much everything. Just not good enough. Andy, Ken said he did a good job. Give them credit. But we just really weren't competitive enough, especially on offense and defense. Just made too many mistakes and didn't play well on top of that. Fundamentals weren't good enough. Really nothing was good enough. So we all got to do a better job. That's going to be pretty much the answer to every question, because that's what it was.
Listen, certainly was mistakes, and then they were flat out executed. Oh, by the way, Kansas City, against them, they had 15 penalties for 139 yards. They weren't helping their own cause there, yet they overcame that. The bottom line is New England had the lead at halftime, 17-14. You thought they were actually going to start pulling away in the first half. They didn't. They had the lead going into the fourth quarter, 27-21, and they couldn't hold it. And that is in part, certainly Bill will talk about mistakes, but he also, gave credit to Andy Reid and the Chiefs, and as well they should, for what that team did coming on the road and doing that. But I don't want to be in that film session today. Going to be an ugly one.
Okay, Mike and Mike, tune in tomorrow. The Indians host the Orioles, presented by Firestone Complete Auto Care. Indians, by the way, won again yesterday. Coverage begins 12:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN Radio app. Now, we have a story here that Adam Schefter just reported, and the timing of it is so stunning to me. All right, I'm just going to read you the story. Bear in mind that today in Sherman, Texas, a judge is expected to issue a temporary restraining order to Ezekiel Elliott, which will allow him to continue playing through this season until an appeal is ultimately heard. You all understand what's going on now with the 6-game suspension for domestic violence. One of the things that we have brought up repeatedly during this is that one of the NFL's problems that they have, and one of the things the union is attacking, is inconsistency in application of the policy, which is to say the policy in very big letters says domestic violence equals 6 games. And then in very small letters it says, or it could be more and it could be less depending on the circumstances.
Right.
But that's kind of the fine print. It's almost like the terms and conditions that nobody ever bothers reading.
Nobody ever reads, yeah.
And the one that we bring up all the time is Josh Brown.
Yeah, and you brought up a few others that, by the way, never reached the 6 games.
Right, Quincy Enunwa, Junior Gillette. But Josh Brown was one game.
One game.
One game in a highly publicized case that got a lot of attention. And now, today, on the day that this TRO is going to, the decision is going to be made, and right at the height of the fight over the Zeke Elliott matter, we get this from Adam Schefter. Former Giants kicker Josh Brown is being suspended another 6 games for domestic violence accusations, per league sources. Brown was suspended 1 game last year, but the league launched another investigation and decided to suspend Brown 6 more games on the same day that Cowboys running back Zeke Elliott is waiting to hear from a Texas judge whether he will be granted a TRO that would allow him to continue to play this season. Brown, whom the Giants released last October, told GMA, and then it goes into all the details of the story. The 1-game suspension for Brown was levied last August. He is currently a free agent. So, Mike, there you go.
I mean, what I don't understand, was there new things that came out, or they just went back and they opened the old investigation and did this? I'm not
all
sure
I have
I
for you here is what I'm reading, so we can try and get a hold of Shefty, guys, and see if he has more details. This is what I have. What I just read you is literally everything I know. The league, here's the wording.
Okay.
The league launched another investigation and decided to suspend Brown 6 more games. That's what I have.
I'm not sure. Listen, we all agree they blew it the first time by not giving him at least the 6 games and that the starting point. Now, again, the CBA and court system are 2 different things that you're dealing with. if this is based off the old investigation, if you do an investigation and punish somebody, can you go back and reinvestigate the same thing and punish them more? I guess
Mike,
I don't know.
He can do
You're right.
anything he wants.
Yeah,
we've covered this.
But I want to know if that's it. I want to know if that's what's going on, or if there was new evidence somewhere, or if they just went back and said, you know what, we're going to look at this again because, we're getting crushed by everybody for it. It keeps getting thrown back in our faces, in conjunction with the Zeke Elliott thing. And so should we go back and look at it? That we need to try and find the answers to.
Yes. In a courtroom, that would be called double jeopardy.
Yes,
in the
would.
NFL, it's called Article 46. C, Brady, Tom. C, balls, deflated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're dealing in here. And because Brown hasn't played since and isn't going to, you could suspend him for 1 million games. They're not going to make any difference. No one's signing a kicker with this on his record.
He's not being signed.
So this is like an irrelevant, but the cynical among us might suggest it's awfully conveniently timed, considering the other things that are going on. Look, I can't sit here and say it's the wrong thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Taking domestic violence seriously is the right thing to do. But, boy, does this feel like the timing is awfully convenient.
The NFL, in trying to get things right, seems to struggle at times in trying to get things right. That this should have been done the first time out with the 6 games, and it wasn't. So now you're going back and doing it again. Is it off the same old information you had? Is it new information? Yeah, there's definitely some questions there. Hey, everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, ADT helps keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling. ADT, home, safe home.
All right, Twitter reaction quickly. 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Madrill tweets to us, unless Josh Brown did something else, this 6-game suspension won't stand. See the Ray Rice case where they tried to double back. Again, we'll talk to Schefter and see if there is new information they uncovered. At some point during this, they created their own investigative arm, right? They used to basically rely upon the law enforcement, and now they have their own investigation. So did they conduct their own investigation and find new things out? We got to get some of that information before we really go crazy here.
Other than that, we're just kind of guessing. Did they make it 6 because they want to establish now that it's just going to be 6 like they did with Zeke because they didn't do that before? They're trying to reestablish it. There are certainly questions here to answer.
All right, a lot of questions for the Patriots coming out of a tough opening night as the Chiefs went in there and in the second half, fourth quarter in particular, blew the doors off the defending champs. And here's our NFL Nation Patriots reporter, Mike Reiss, standing by bright and early with some of the recap. Good morning, Mike Reiss.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Doing well. We played Bill Belichick's summation of the night, and it was typical Bill Belichick. We weren't good enough on offense, defense, or special teams. In your mind, what was the most alarming last night? What was the thing that you think Belichick walks in the building this morning as his first order of business of concern coming out of last night's game?
Well, I'll give you one on both sides of the ball. I mean, the big plays given up on defense, I mean, that's the hallmark of Bill Belichick coach team is just don't give up the big plays. And to have, 2 touchdowns for the Chiefs over 70 yards, they only did that once in their franchise history to have that happen in a single game. So that's on defense. And then on offense, I can just picture him now standing in front of the team saying, we can't even gain a yard on 4th and 1. 2 separate times we go for it on 4th and 1 with runs up the middle, and they can't even gain a yard. So those would be the 2 areas that probably top his list of disgust this morning.
How about the area, and we don't know, Amendola goes out with a head injury. You already have Edelman out. Such a big area of success for this team has been third down conversion. Last night it was very bad, and normally it can be Edelman. He's not going to be around. Amendola could fill in for that spot. Any news on his head injury, and then the concern, obviously, for that part of the game?
Well, there was no news after the game on the severity of it, but that was exactly what we've talked about ever since Edelman went out with the knee injury, that with Amendola you have to manage him because history has shown as you give his workload an increase, whether it's at receiver or punt returner, he is more prone to injury. So that certainly showed up for them, the idea that when you lost Edelman, the offense didn't look the same, and that's Brady's go-to receiver. But the Patriots have been known for that next man up, whether it's Brady himself last year or Gronkowski, so they weren't using that as an excuse last night.
Let's talk about Gronkowski. How did he look to you last night, Mike?
Well, it caught my eye, Greeny, that he played every snap in the first half, and so it was full go for him. But it still looked to me like he's trying to find his past form, and it was an amazing almost touchdown catch there in the end zone, and it looked like that play might have taken a little bit out of him, going forward in the game. But he said after the game that he came out clean and that he felt good from a conditioning and health standpoint. So maybe just knocking off a little bit of that rust.
They had the lead at halftime, 17-14, had the lead going into the fourth quarter, 27-21. So I know as a former defensive player, that's all I can ask for. If the other team doesn't score, they don't win. Well, the other team scored 21 in the fourth quarter. Is that going to be more the concern? I would imagine this is a ridiculous question to ask when you give up 42 points, but that was very un-New England-like as far as what's going to have to be done on that side of the ball.
And that's a great point, because what stood out to me in the postgame was when Tom Brady said that it starts with the team's attitude and competitiveness. And I know we're talking about, defense, but this was the whole team. To hear that come out, from Tom Brady, one of the leaders on the team, that was a big theme in the post-game locker room, the idea that when things don't go your way in the game of football, how do you respond? And when you think about the Patriots under Bill Belichick and, Tom Brady being a top leader for them and player over this era of, the last 16, 17 years, I mean, that's been a key thing for them. I mean, they always respond in those situations, especially at home on a night like that. So it was a little bit of a message that Belichick was sending his team and Brady as well through the media that they're going to have to go back to ground zero here, step one, and try to build from that point, because that was not Patriot type in that area in terms of attitude and level of competitiveness in the fourth quarter.
All right, you're around this team all the time. I read articles about the big fanfare before the game with the inflatable Super Bowl trophies and the score 28-3, the showing at the time before the comeback, and some thinking that maybe New England was caught up in that, not only the fan, but the players caught up in it a little bit this year, maybe more than other years. Again, you're around them all the time. Did you see a difference in them leading up to this season opener as opposed to others?
I really didn't, Mike. And they have 53 players on the roster, and I think only 37 or 38 of them were on the team last year. There were so many new faces and turning the page that I didn't get that sense at all. And in fact, the way the game started, it was impressive. The opening drive touchdown, and you would almost look at that and say, same old Patriots. So I felt like once, that part wasn't really a factor. It was more once you got into the groove of the game and the players settled in, and that's what made it so surprising, because really the pregame ceremony, which was certainly a show, it had almost like a Super Bowl feel to it. That to me, that there wasn't really much of a carryover from that to the game itself. The Chiefs just beat them at their own game, sort of got them into the game and out-adjusted them and out-schemed them and just outplayed them.
Mike and Mike Reiss, who covers the Patriots for us live in Foxborough. The other sidebar pregame and I suppose during the game was the return of Roger Goodell for the first time in a regular season game since all of the Deflategate stuff. Do you feel the Patriot fans got their pound of verbal flesh last night? Does that put something of an end to the bad feelings there? What was your takeaway from the Goodell story last night?
Yeah, I did. I do think so, Mike, and I was right there in the corner of the end zone where he was standing, and when the fans were waiting for him, and you could hear them chanting his name, and they let him have it, and that's all they could ask for in terms of fans in that situation, and at this point going forward, I mean, I'm not sure what else they could ask for. So I think they got it. That's what they were waiting for. He had come in that preseason opener. They weren't expecting him, and so they were anticipating this. And to have him on the field, I thought that was important, that they saw him out there, and it was important for him to be out there. And then he sort of got out and let the game take center stage. And so I would agree with that. I think that the fans got what they wanted in that case.
You said you was there. Did you see or hear anything in his reaction on television? It appeared he basically tried to pretend it wasn't happening. And again, he's a person who's accustomed to getting booed in so many different venues. But this clearly was at least a little different. Did you see or hear anything in his reaction?
Well, I did, because, like I said, I was standing right there, and so he walked out the tunnel, where Chiefs players were coming onto the field, and so I followed him out, and he stopped to do a very quick interview with one local Boston TV station and was asked about it, and I had asked the reporter who happened to just be in position to get him, and I said, what did he say? What did he say about the reaction? And he said, look, he understands that, fans are passionate, and that's why they're fans, and that he was just deflecting, toward the start of the season.
All right, Mike Reiss, it's well done. I know it was a late night last night for you, so thanks for getting up early this morning with the perspective. We'll check in next week. Have a great weekend. Mike Reiss with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold.
Let me just say, I asked that question about, all the fanfare before the game and were the Patriots any different going to this game. I asked it because I read something about it. I don't buy it, because you're winning at halftime. You're winning going into the fourth quarter. You don't let the other team score, you win that game. You are doing enough to win that game. This was the Chiefs out executing them, out blocking them, blown coverage on a long pass, man-to-man where you got torched, good run blocking for Hunt. So the credit goes to the Chiefs.
Patriots will be fine, assuming Gronkowski is fine and assuming they figure out the wide receivers. The offensive line looked shaky last night. They'll be fine. And again, they're in a terrible division. The storyline last night is Kansas City looked great.
Yeah, they did.
Just great in an opener, and you can't ask for more in an opener because now they get a mini bye going into the second game of the season. They absolutely do.
It's a shame. You know there's injuries all the time, and you get them in the very first game, and it looks like a season ender. If it's an Achilles, going to be for Eric Berry. They're all-pro safety, so that really is going to hurt them. Dante Hightower, again, the linebacker for New England. We haven't heard anything as far. He had a knee, how long that may be. Amendola, his head, we're not sure about that either. But, if this Eric Berry thing is true with the Achilles, he is done for the year, and that is a devastating blow to that defense.
Chiefs play next Sunday, a week from Sunday, home against the Eagles. All right, Adam Schefter will join us live next with whatever additional insight he can offer into his story this morning that the NFL is suspending Josh Brown another 6 games. What does it mean? What did they find?
Dad, we talk a lot about sports.
Yes, we do.
And food.
Yep.
And sometimes even health.
That is true.
In a recent survey, the Cleveland Clinic found that today's fathers and sons are talking more about their health than previous generations, but there's still a conversation gap around below-the-belt issues.
Cleveland Clinic wants to remind all men to mention it to their doctor.
Doctors have heard it all before, especially Cleveland Clinic. They're ranked #1 in urology in the nation.
And they've got answers to 10 questions most men are afraid to ask at clevelandclinic.org/mention it.
Mike and Mike, very busy this morning again off a stunning performance by the Chiefs last night in Foxborough with 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns to take the season opener. The news this morning from our Adam Schefter that the league is suspending former Giants kicker 6 more games for domestic violence, and the timing of it certainly raised our eyebrows. So let's get as much information as we can from the man who has the story and always does. Here's Schefter with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Good morning, Schefter.
Good morning, Mike and Mike. How are you?
We're great. Go ahead. We'll just give you the floor. Tell us the story as if we're hearing it for the first time.
Well, essentially, the NFL is suspending Josh Brown, who had suspended last year for 1 game, 6 more games for domestic violence. Now, it's the same situation. The league will say that it launched another investigation and found more material that required a 6-game suspension. At the same time, it certainly raises the question. I have not seen, rarely seen, seldom seen, if ever seen, a player suspended twice for essentially the same situation at a time where Ezekiel Elliott is facing a 6-game suspension. And look, I think the league is very aware of the perception surrounding it and domestic violence. And I think a lot of people raise the question when the league suspended Ezekiel Elliott, how many times did you hear someone say, well, how could Josh Brown get 1 game when Ezekiel Elliott got 6 games? And now the league believes it has enough evidence to say that Josh Brown is worthy of a 6-game suspension. Now, I go back to what Josh Brown told Good Morning America last February, and he told Good Morning America that he never hit his ex-wife, Molly Brown, and I'm using his quotes where he said, I had put my hands on her. I hit the chair, I held her down. Holding down was the worst moment in our marriage, but I never hit her, I never slapped her, I never choked her, I never did those types of things. The league made its own determination. It has suspended Josh Brown 6 games, and that altogether will be 7 games. Josh Brown is unemployed. He is out of the league right now. Obviously, teams are waiting to see how this case was adjudicated. I think that they knew it would be coming. And so in the same week where Ezekiel Elliott fights his case, where we're going to hear from a judge in Texas today on whether or not he's granted a temporary restraining order, and as Will Cain pointed out yesterday, the expectation is that he will. Josh Brown, former Giants kicker, suspended 6 games.
So what I'm trying to understand, Schefter, is the league did their investigation, suspended Josh Brown 1 game. So then are we saying there was new information, or did they just reopen the case for, I'm not sure of the reason, or is it because they heard things after that, whether it was Josh Brown's interview or the diaries or whatever that came out? What made the NFL go back to this?
I think the NFL is going to try to justify this by saying the journals surfaced, additional evidence in the league's mind surfaced, and the league has the right to do what it wants in terms of disciplining players. Again, comes at a very sensitive time where the league has been under intense scrutiny for the way it handles domestic violence situations. So the league will say that the new evidence of those journals surfaced where there was an admission that he was in an abusive marriage at that point in time. But again, we go back to what Josh Brown said when he told Good Morning America last year in regards to whether I hit her, and I quote, "No, I did not. I did not touch her on the wrist."
All right, that's Adam Schefter. It is pretty much what we thought it was. And Schefter, it's great work, as always. We'll check in with you later.
You,
if not, have a great
day.
weekend. That's Adam Schefter with us. He referenced our conversation with Will Cain. We'll play that for you in a second. Listen, here's the thing. You cannot, in one sentence, say, we want the National Football League to be a leader in this extraordinarily significant societal issue, and they should not do the right thing when it comes to this, even if they did the wrong thing to begin with. However, it is just impossible to overlook the timing of this. If they had done this a week ago or 6 months from now or something like that, you could stand on your chair and applaud and say, you know what, they went back, they found more, they're doing the right thing. It's never the wrong time to do the right thing, and that continues to apply. But it is just almost impossible not to at least suspect that the timing of the two are so connected.
Well, considering they supposedly reopened this last October.
Right.
So that's a number of months ago, and then the decision just so happens to come down right now. So I'm with you on that. They seem at times to want to be tough on this, but have been having a tough time being consistent on this. And so I don't know if this is part of announcing now that they want to make the 6 games, and that's how it needs to be for good going forward. I don't know, but I'm with you. It's a head scratcher of you want them to, if you're going to have a policy and you're going to punish people and you can do it under your own power for domestic violence, you want people to lay the hammer. That's what you want about that. I mean, just lay the hammer down. So they're going to do it. You can debate whether you want them to do it or not, but they're going to do it. Then you just have to decide, okay, now, how is the process of them doing it? I'm sorry I talked too much. We can't hear Will Cain.
No, we'll play the sound off the top of the hour. That's no problem at all. No, you're making the right points. We'll play the Will Cain off the top of the hour. There's no rush on that. He said it yesterday. Everything you said is exactly right. I don't disagree with a word that you just said. You want them to take the lead on this. They've sort of set themselves up in a position where they act like they want to take the lead on it. Yes. And I really genuinely believe that their intention in that is noble. So I think they want to do the right thing.
Just can't.
They seem to really be struggling to figure out how.
They really do.
And I'm not sitting here telling you that it's easy.
Right. Agreed.
This is an extremely complicated issue that we as a society have not been able to figure out.
Exactly.
But They feel like they're fighting two battles at once. One of them is they want to be a leader in domestic violence. The other is they want to win sort of the PR battle when it comes to their stance on domestic violence. And those two seem not to always coincide with each other well. If you missed what Will Cain said his expectation was yesterday about Zeke Elliott, we'll play that for you coming up next. Much more on the NFL opener, and we look ahead to this weekend's games. Stay with us. Football Friday, Mike and Mike.
You've been waiting for this since February 6th. Football season is here, and there's no better way to get closer to the game you love than with DraftKings 1 Week Fantasy Football. To celebrate, DraftKings is hosting a $100,000 contest this Sunday that is totally free to enter, and if you draft the perfect lineup, you can win $1 billion. With DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. Choose between public contests with big cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against a group of your friends. That's what I do every single week. DraftKings also has beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill level. The best part is you get to draft a new team each week without any commitment. So get to DraftKings.com now and use the promo code REPLAY to play in DraftKings free contest with $100,000 in total prizes this Sunday. And if you draft the perfect lineup, you can win $1 billion. That's promo code REPLAY to play for your shot to win $1 billion this Sunday. The contest totally free to enter, so why wouldn't you try it? DraftKings, the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for all the details.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling that you're safe to enjoy the things that matter most. ADT lets you take that feeling with you. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, we help keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling for less than $1 a day. ADT. Home. Safe home.
We are on a Football Friday. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. They'll include my favorite tennis player that ever lived, Chris Evert, in this hour on an All-American women's final at the U.S. Open tomorrow. History will be made. Damian Woody, Stephen A., also on the way today. Two huge football stories on the docket. Of course, it starts with the season opener last night. Roger Goodell got booed loudly, and then the Patriots gave up 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns and lost to the Chiefs in a big way, and Kareem Hunt was the huge storyline last night. Third-round running back out of Toledo getting it done for the Chiefs. And so there's a lot of people out there this morning that will be talking a lot, Mike, about New England. I think that the last night's game is more about Kansas City to me than it is about New England. Now, if this starts to become, look, the Patriots don't have it easy. They go to New Orleans a week and a half from now. They get a little mini bye now, but then they go to the Saints, which is never easy, and New Orleans obviously always has an explosive offense. So if all of a sudden this starts to turn into a pattern, then we can start discussing this in a bigger picture sense. I am much more inclined to think last night, bad night, offensive line didn't look good, Gronkowski sort of kicking off the cobwebs. I think the Patriots will be fine.
Yeah, I do as well. You look at the things that they're going to break down in film today, which will be an ugly film session. I've been part of those. No fun at all. It's just when there's one thing to having a scheme, and we always talk about the scheme that the Patriots have both offensively and defensively, that they can out-scheme you and out-game plan you. But what's the bottom line to everything, Greeny, out on the field? At some point, the scheme can be there, but then you have to execute. The scheme is there, but then you have to execute to the fact that a linebacker is covering Kareem Hunt one-on-one out of the backfield, and Kareem Hunt just runs right by him. Okay? The scheme says you should be able to contain on a run play to the left, which you do, so Hunt bounces it back to the right. But the scheme doesn't say he's going to stiff-arm some guy away and then avoid another tackler by kind of jumping over him. So there's scheme, which puts you in position to be able to make a play, and then there's executing and making the play. And last night, the Kansas City Chiefs executed in making their plays.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Bill Belichick, secretly and privately, there's a part of you that says, this is just what we needed. You know, if everyone is going to be telling my players how great they are, we're going to be 16-0, we're the best team ever, are we as good? Vegas is setting lines and what this team would do against the 07 Patriots. There's a significant dose of reality that he gets to reinstill here. To me, the biggest winner of the night is Kansas City, with the exception of a terrible loss of Eric Berry. And, of course, players are going to get hurt, but he's one of their most important players. But this is a team that will go as far, I believe, as their pass rush, When those guys are healthy, they get after the quarterback, and boy, they got after Brady last night.
They did, and the best lineman there for the Patriots, Cannon, had an excellent year last year. He was their best lineman. He's out at right tackle, Solder at left tackle. Those edge rushers were putting some pressure on Brady. There were 3 sacks, but there was some quick pressure as well from the outside, and that's what the Chiefs do so well. So what's the thing about it is you know about those pass rushers, you know about their defense, you know about Eric Berry, so that part's going to be devastating to them. You know about Hill, you know about Kelsey, but this is what also happens is you find that new one, whether it's a new acquisition that comes to fruition or it's a draft pick, and in this case, you find a rookie who you're like, wow. Fumbles on the first play, loses it, and then all of a sudden, 22 total touches, and the first one was a fumble, 246 yards. So you're like, wow, there's a weapon going forward, both running the ball and catching the ball.
Our Steve Young was watching Kareem Hunt, and he was impressed.
He Dak Prescotted him, and rookie year kind of stuff, like amazing, unprecedented, record-setting. And why is it? Because he seemed like he's a four-tool kind of guy. I mean, there's nothing he can't do. And I love the idea that he fumbled the first play. On the road against the new Super Bowl champs, fumble. It can't be worse. It's like the Kentucky Derby, the first time out of the gate, and you go right to the face. There's so many things to build off for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially when they need that back. They only carried 2 backs tonight. And if Alex Smith is going to leave his old skin of being very scientific about the game. I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to watch myself. I'm not going to make mistakes. And therefore, I'm going to kick a lot of field goals. I'm not going to put in the end zone. If all of a sudden he's going to be the gunslinger, watch out for the Chiefs, right?
It's like a swear word when you say a quarterback manages the game well, and that has followed. This is a former number 1 pick in the draft, and this has followed him for years. Well, if you get into a shootout, he's not your guy. He's more of a game manager. He puts everybody in the right position, not really going to, air the ball out. And last night you saw him air it out a couple of times and throw 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and have himself a great game. I'm sure there's no one that hates that tag more and what it supposedly means more than Alex Smith.
Actually, he doesn't ever hear it. I read a great story about him during the preseason that he literally shuts himself off from all media. But you know who follows it all? I'll give you one guess. His wife.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And she is the one who gets steamed. She's the one who gets mad when people call him a game manager. But listen, I mean, pay no attention to what people say. Just follow what they do. What did the Chiefs do on draft night? Right? They made a huge trade up to take Patrick Mahomes. So the Chiefs have made a statement. Andy Reid has made a statement that his future at quarterback is named Mahomes. It isn't named Smith. Smith isn't 40 years old. Brady is 40 years old. Smith is young enough to be your quarterback for 5 more years, but he isn't going to be. So, I don't know exactly how that factors in, but Alex Smith, all the conversation is about how he's not even the most talented quarterback on his own team anymore. And all of a sudden last night, what did he throw for? 370 and 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. So that's look, in every way that a night can be a great night for Kansas City, that was a great night for Kansas City. On the other side of it, for the Patriots, in every way that a night can be a bad night, it was. Outside of getting the opportunity finally to in person boo Roger Goodell as loudly as they could, the fans had to see their offense look shaky. Again, that offensive line get beat up a little bit, and the defense really struggled, particularly in that second half. Here's Teddy Bruschi on that Patriots D.
2 of the staples of a New England Patriot defense is this: set the edge in the running game, don't give up explosive plays. And they got schooled in that all night. A toss to the edge, big runs, 30, 40 yards, right outside, no edges set on the edge of the line of scrimmage. There's nothing there. There's no resistance. There's no Hightower. There's no Ninkovich. They're just rolling people over.
True. I mean, those are the hallmarks of that defense is it's responsibility defense. Versatile players who play responsible defense take care of your responsibility. And whether it's a direct run that goes to the outside like you just saw where they got the corner, Kansas City did, or if it's a play that starts left and goes back right, one of the things I just showed on the telestration board over there that goes back right, be there. If you're the backside, be there. Do your job. That's been the hallmark of the New England Patriots, that they will game plan you and they will be in position. And at times they were in position, they just got blocked, and at other times they weren't in position.
We are Mike and Mike. We're just getting rolling on this Football Friday. First Take today is live at Billy Bob's in Fort Worth, Texas. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Customers who switch to Progressive save an average of $500. Call or click today. Find out if they could save you hundreds on your car insurance. Okay, so there's that. And obviously, the NFL has their huge season kickoff, last night. And here we are. What time does that game end? 8 hours ago? Not even? 7 hours ago? And we have this story this morning from Adam Schefter. We'll make it Straight Talk, which is brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Here was Schefter live with us this morning on the new news that he reported, again, just 7 hours after the first game of the season came to an end.
The NFL is suspending Josh Brown, who had suspended last year for 1 game, 6 more games for domestic violence. Now, it's the same situation. The league will say that it launched another investigation and found more material that required a 6-game suspension. At the same time, it certainly raises the question. I have not seen, rarely seen, seldom seen, if ever seen, a player suspended twice for essentially the same situation at a time where Ezekiel Elliott is facing a 6-game suspension. And look, I think the league is very aware of the perception surrounding it and domestic violence. And I think a lot of people raise the question when the league suspended Ezekiel Elliott, how many times did you hear someone say, well, how could Josh Brown get 1 game when Ezekiel Elliott got 6 games?
Yeah. So that's the problem. And so the timing of it is what makes everybody's eyebrows go straight up.
Yeah, it really does. Since the investigation was reopened in October, that it would be now that the decision comes down. Listen, I'm with you. I think in the meaning of it all, I think the NFL wants to do the right thing, but they also want, to look like they're doing the right thing to the public as well, and make no mistake about that, of public perception, but also wanting to do the right thing and have struggled at times in the process. I think that's really easy to say. They're in an area which is a horrific part of everyday life, forget just in sports, and they've decided to make a stand against it with a policy. And so I am fine with that. There are those, like, we had Will Kane in here who thinks they shouldn't, and sports shouldn't get involved in cases like that. If the court cases don't pursue it, then some people don't think the league should. So you can decide whether you want them to or not. The bottom line is football is, the NFL is. They decided to do that. So my thought had always been, if you're going to do it with a stern hand in this situation, because it's such a horrible thing that we're talking about. And that's where the NFL, in my opinion, has slipped. I appreciate them wanting to be hard on this, but the process for them has had its issues, no doubt about it.
Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. I mean, let's just stop and think for a moment about what the conversation that we're having. This is complicated stuff, right? You're talking about the National Football League. Their job is putting on football games. Their job is negotiating television contracts. Their job is making money, and they do that as well as anybody I've ever seen. In my lifetime, I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone make money better than the National Football League makes money. Now they have gotten into a couple of other little areas here. They have launched an investigative team, unit, whatever the word is, that is going to go where law enforcement traditionally goes and try and determine the reality of certain incidents, and then assess them themselves and rule on them themselves and assess discipline themselves, which is quite an undertaking. Now, like you, I totally get their desire to do that, because you don't want the perception, you don't want a bunch of Greg Hardys running around the league who got out of what he got out of the way he got out of it, and now all of a sudden he's playing every Sunday, and a lot of people are turned off by that. Although most evidence that we've saw in ratings and things like that suggests that fans didn't, stop watching for 1 second because of that. But you don't want that in your league because, A, it's just not a good thing, and B, it's bad for your image. So I get both sides of it. They're kind of damned if they do or they're damned if they don't. But if you're going to do it, then you have to be consistent in the way that you do it. Otherwise, it just looks terrible. So while they basically have been given by the courts, A, first by the Players Association, and then B, secondarily by the courts, the latitude to do basically whatever they want, according to Article 46. If you just sort of administer everything kind of willy-nilly the way it feels like they do, I'm sure they don't view it that way. Right. But it is the way it feels.
It's the way it's coming across.
Then it almost feels worse than not doing it in the first place.
Well, I've been going back and forth with the NFL, and this is what
this morning you're talking about. Okay, let's hear.
This is what they said about it, and it kind of goes to that at the end. The talk of when we had Schefter on of what they did, they reopened the investigation, concluded there was a violation of the personal conduct policy, imposed a 6-game suspension, which Josh Brown accepted without appeal. They said timing has nothing to do with Zeke and made no sense to hold this until Zeke was complete. That's the part where a lot of people aren't going to buy into that. Then going on to say that not the cleanest process, but we got the right result. These are incredibly difficult issues, and we're learning and getting better. That's basically where we're just talking about. You're choosing to take on something that's a difficult thing, not just in sports, but everywhere, and not the cleanest, or cleanest process right now. I think everybody would agree with that, and they're trying to get better at it. Do we sit there and doubt that? Do we sit there and think they don't want to get better at this for domestic violence? You got to believe they do. You got to believe they want to do the right thing for what is being done with domestic violence. And as I said, there's part of it is public perception as well, how they're viewed by the public, the paying customers, both those and advertisers as well. And they said, they're learning and getting better. And so I guess everything we're saying, that's what was kind of said here by the NFL is it's complicated, it's tough, wasn't the cleanest in the world process here, but we're trying and we're getting better at this. So, nothing earth-shattering there. I do think the line timing has nothing to do with Zeke. I think a lot of people are not going to buy that one just because of the timing of when we opened in October. That's many months ago to have the announcement right now. For a guy,
on the day that the Zeke decision is going to be made.
For a guy, by the way, who's not playing this weekend.
Right.
So it's not like you were making a decision now for a guy playing this weekend. By the way, if it was an active player, he would have been able to play this weekend, you would think, because they just made the announcement now, though I don't know when they told him. But he doesn't have a team. So he's a free agent, so he accepted this suspension without appeal. I don't think anybody's going to sign him anyway. I don't think that was ever going to happen. But so that's from the NFL.
Look, the level of coincidence of this to accept that the timing has nothing to do with it. Okay, I mean, let people make up their own minds on that.
That one's going to be – because I get all this. Listen, not the cleanest process, but we got the right result. Difficult issues, we're learning and getting better. You can accept all those, right?
Yes, of course.
You can accept we got new evidence, so we reopened it. We found there was a violation of the personal conduct policy. Boom, we won 6 games. That one line is going to be the one where people zero in on and not buy into it has nothing to do with the time.
Right. Sometimes when you go back and clean up your own mistakes to sort of try and use that word in there. Look, I would have held it. If that is really true, I would have held it until after the Zeke thing was ruled for public relations reasons. Josh Brown isn't on a team right now. As you just said, this 6-game suspension, you could levy it any time you want. It wouldn't make any difference. If you wait till Monday after the Zeke Elliott, well, I guess no matter when you did it, the timing was always going to look like it was being done at the same time. Here's one of the problems they have, okay? When it comes to the battle between the NFL and the NFL Players Association, everyone has lost the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Everyone has lost the benefit of the doubt. Because at this point, I don't believe anything either side is doing is not meant to go directly at the other. So at a time when the NBA and the NBA Players Association yesterday released a joint statement encouraging their players to be socially active, to be meaningful in their communities, actually got together and to empower their players. God forbid anyone should figure out there's a good idea. Our players are the ones who are wearing our logo all the time. They're the ones who are selling our game, our business, and our sport. Let's empower them. Let's work with them to make them the best they can be. Instead, you got these. You made the perfect analogy yesterday. It's become like what politics is in this country now. It's the Democrats and Republicans who are much more interested in damaging the other than they are in what's the best for everybody. Shouldn't the NFL and the Players Association be working together to prevent domestic violence? That we've thrown that into the middle of this. That's become like a bargaining chip now between the NFL and the NFLPA. What we're talking about here is beating up women. And that has now become something that they're all bargaining over because of the animosity power, and the distrust between the two sides. That is the part that if it doesn't bother you, it should.
Listen, I agree. They don't agree on much, and there's no trust there, and there's no building of any relationship going forward. And part of it is this power situation, and part of it certainly is the process the NFL is going through, which, again, I don't blame the union for jumping in. Their job is to back their players and even backing players who have domestic violence, because there are a lot of people that say the union shouldn't even back them. The union's job is to work for the people that they represent.
Correct. Here's how I would define that. Okay. My father was a lawyer. So your job as a lawyer when you were defending a person is to make sure that person gets a fair and reasonable trial. It is not to try and get a guilty person off. It is to make sure that the proceedings are reasonable, that a person gets whatever could be described as justice in a circumstance. So that's what the union should be doing. The union should be fighting to make sure that the way the league handles players, even ones who do things that are terribly wrong, the union shouldn't be sitting there saying, I don't care if our players, beat up women. Nothing should happen to them. They should be making sure the process is fair and reasonable for everyone. That's their job. Right. And it would be delightful if the two sides could come together and say, on this issue, we are going to work together because it is of great consequence and it is far more significant than these games we go out there and play every Sunday. But they don't. They throw this thing in the middle of their court battles, and what winds up happening is the issue itself is diminished.
Well,
they don't do it purposely, but it diminishes the issue.
Because we get to this policy, and the league will say we wanted the union involved in making this policy, and the union will say they never wanted us involved in this at all and wouldn't listen to us. So there again is the mistrust, and it immediately goes to, unfortunately, a negative connotation or confrontation, I should say, between the two, and you really struggle to get anything accomplished that way.
So do I think that they're trying to do the right thing? Yes, I do. I think they're trying to do the right thing, and it would be delightful if they tried to do it together. Because we promised it, let me play you the Will Kane from yesterday. Again, Will Kane basically grew up in the Sherman County Courthouse, which is another impossible to imagine coincidence. But he is a lawyer, and he grew up there. He knows the judge. He knows a lot of people connected to it. And as you'll hear, he came on our show yesterday and said people he knows who are in that courtroom expect the judge to rule in favor of Zeke Elliott.
A handful of lawyers from Sherman were in the courtroom on Tuesday evening listening to the arguments between the NFL and the NFLPA. And they all came away from that. They all listened to it and came away from it thinking that Judge Amos Mazant was going to grant Ezekiel Elliott's temporary restraining order. That he asked the NFL on 3 separate occasions tough questions about the process and said, tell me how this isn't unfair. Explain to me how this is a fundamentally fair process. And the NFL, at least in the estimation of these attorneys, did not answer that in a satisfactory way for Judge Mazant. And they told me, look, we will not be surprised at all. We have full expectation that on Friday he's going to grant that temporary restraining order.
That's today, gang. That's by 5 o'clock today. And if Zeke Elliott gets that, not only will the Cowboy players, Cowboy fans, but every fantasy person who has Zeke on their team, let's be honest, that's very true, is going to be happy because he is going to be able to play until the proceedings are concluded.
And here's another one, again, where the union is now dying for this fight because they want to go to court and they want to fight over Article 46. Right. And the league, as you've said many times, this has stopped being about the issues and is exclusively about the power. And what's in the middle? What's in the middle? We're talking about a domestic violence issue. That's what we're talking about. But that stops being the issue. We stop talking about that. The really, 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 really important part of this,
to your point,
is lost.
To your point, them working together to come up with a system that they can both at least maybe begrudgingly accept, because rarely do you get everybody, holding hands and singing Kumbaya. But to begrudgingly at least accept that, okay, in this issue, let's get a policy that we can both agree on going forward. So we're not, because there's a difference of losing sight of whether a football was deflated on the field, and really who gives a damn, but it became about the power. But this is domestic violence, which should be way more important than who has the power to do what.
Shouldn't they all be able to agree? This is one thing we can work together to make the best possible policy we can and make the system as reasonable for everyone as we can, to try to genuinely make the National Football League what it can be, which is a leader in the battle against this horrible societal problem. But instead, they've turned it into a bargaining chip.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, ADT helps keep you safe with security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling. ADT, home, safe home.
Mike and Mike with a Football Friday and much more football as we go. But as we mentioned many times, it's history being made right now at the U.S. Open, where we will get an All-American women's final tomorrow afternoon, 4 o'clock Eastern time. And joining us now, my favorite tennis player that ever lived, Chris Evert, is with us on the Shell Pinto Performance Line. Hi, Chrissy.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing well. So explain what this means to you as one of the great champions in the history of the game of tennis, and as a great American champion, where we've seen this era where we have not really had an American man to get behind, I guess, since the prime of Roddick. And we've had the Williams sisters who've been so sensational, but to have these two women playing tomorrow for the U.S. Open title, what does this mean to you?
What does this mean to me? Well, first of all, I think that one of the reasons why we had 3 young American players and we have 14 players in the top 100 in the world, and the sudden emergence of American tennis, I think it's all about the influence of Serena and Venus. And I kept wondering in the last, 15 years, where is our next new American champion? And the thing is that these girls, Madison Keys, Coco, Sloane, at 5 and 6 and 7 years old, were all watching TV, and we're all starting tennis around the time Venus and Serena were on TV, starting to win Grand Slams. And I just think that they were very impressed, and they say this in all their press conferences, that this is why they are in the tennis. They saw them on TV. They saw the power. They saw their beautiful clothing, and it really inspired them. And so this is the influence of these two. I'm going to say veterans, but icons also. The other thing is, we've been criticized for where are the next American stars. In the 80s there was myself and Martina and Tracy Austin and then Lindsay Davenport and Jennifer Capriati, and it was the age of Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe. And you know what? The world caught up. It became a global sport. And players from all over the world, in their smaller countries, tennis became the number one sport, and they could give money to them. They could, just build a lot of different tennis players. And I think that the world caught up. And now it's sort of gone full circle, and now we're seeing more and more players, young American players.
Chris, for the casual tennis fan out there, which every sport wants to get, they have their hardcore fans. They want to get the casual fan to tune in, and this has been a great year for it by having, the All-American semifinal going on from the women's side. So you have Keys, who's 22, Stevens, who's 24, Vandeweghe is 25. Can one of those women, or which one in your mind, can they? If Venus is coming to the end, we're not sure what's coming on with Serena after the birth of her child or where that's going to go, but she was still coming to the end of her career. Can one of these women?
Madison Keys. I'm going to interrupt you because I know exactly what you're going to ask me. Madison Keys. She is the player. She unleashes power along the same level as Serena does. She has a serve as hard as Serena. She has groundies as hard as Serena. She has, her potential is unlimited, and she has such a high ceiling with her game. In the past, we've seen her trying to harness that power, and she's produced errors, and she's played sloppy matches at times, and not really been ready emotionally to, really be a leader in this game. I would pick her as the next American. I think, I favor her slightly over Sloane, although Sloane, you're talking about stories. All these women, by the way, Madison and Sloane have been out of the game for close to a year with surgeries, with injuries, and they've come back with a new appreciation. So, that's another interesting story, that why are these – Roger Federer went out of the game and came back with a new appreciation and is playing the best 10 of his career. So, that's an interesting thing, to be fresh and to really appreciate your tennis more.
And we have these great young stars. Chris Evert is with us here. But as you mentioned, the game has been dominated in recent years, particularly the men's game, by these aging players. And Nadal right now looks like he may wind up winning the U.S. Open here. You see Federer taking time away. This is something you never did, right? The players in your era, you played basically every single week all over the world, everywhere you went. And now you see these players who are taking prolonged periods of time off, and it is extending their careers. In your mind, is this something that you think will continue? I mean, here's Federer, who had as good a year as he's had in years at his age.
Yeah, I mean, I think Serena Williams started it. I mean, she 2 years ago played 6 tournaments the whole year, but she won 2 Grand Slams, and she ended up number 1 in the world. So, I mean, at some point when you've been on the tour 15, 20-plus years, you know, you get burned out mentally. Your body starts to break down, and it is really lengthening out careers. But in my day, you know, I have to tell you, there wasn't the depth in the women's game. And I think that in this day and age, we're seeing when I look at the results of these players that are left in the tournament, they had 3-set matches in the first or second round. You know, I would win 6-love, 6-2 until the quarterfinals, and then that's when the tournament started for me and for Martina and for all the top players. So, I mean, there's much more rich depth in the game, and it's much more athletic than it ever has been before. So that's going to result in more injuries.
For the sport overall, Chris, I had the pleasure of watching you in your prime and all the other greats then on the women's side and the men's side. To the game now, we talk about it in golf a lot. The equipment has gotten better. The players, you know, bigger, faster, stronger. Doesn't necessarily mean better, but the game changes from the speed of everything and the athletic ability. How much has the game itself changed from when you were playing to now, from the athletes?
It's a power game. I mean, in our day, we didn't have as much power, so we viewed placement of the ball, we viewed strategy, we exposed our opponent's weaknesses. We had more time to set up our shots. Now with the power game, you know, it's a very reactive game. You're reacting to the power. I think, and you mentioned rackets, strings also are a big part of really putting spin on the ball, keeping the ball on the court. I mean, the rackets are all power, but the strings enable the player to keep the ball on the court, or else they'd be hitting the fence. And conditioning. Now the training is, I mean, these players have physios, they have nutritionalists, they have sports psychologists, they have a team of 5 or 6 people, and it's more like an Olympic. I mean, it is an Olympic sport, but in my day 30 years ago, we didn't train like an Olympian, and nowadays these tennis players are training like Olympians. And
so we get the American women's final. You said that you slightly favor Madison Keys there. And on the men's side, we get the semis today. Do you expect Nadal to win?
I don't expect anything because this term has been a complete surprise and a lot of upsets. But I would definitely favor Nadal. I think he's hungry. I think his forehand is finally working. His serve is pretty potent, and I think he senses an opportunity. He's certainly had more experience than anybody left in the draw. Del Potro is just like remarkable the way he even got out of trouble against Team. You know, he was sick all week, and then he beats Federer. Definitely, I'm sensing maybe a little letdown from Del Potro, and I'm sensing a lot of hunger, yes, from Nadal.
So we'll see you today. And again, the All-American Women's Final tomorrow. Chris Evert will be there for all of it. Thank you, Chrissy. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Thanks,
Chris.
So much.
Chris Evert with us here on Mike and Mike as we look forward to this. Again, I have such an appreciation for the sport, and so I'm just glad to see it getting some nice attention here.
I've enjoyed it. I'm not going to lie, last night, not as much. I mean, it was so one-sided in the Venus and Williams and Sloane Stephens from set to set. The third set was a good one, you know, and then the other match with Keys and Vandeweghe, not so much. And for all those budding journalists or sports broadcasters out there that want to do a show, learn from my mistakes. When you ask a question that gets interrupted because the person already knows what the question is going to be and then answer it, your question's too long. Okay,
Madison Keys.
I'm asking. I'm trying to set it all up when she's obviously smart enough to know exactly where I was going with that.
I'll give you how good the people who cover the sport are. I went Sunday. I try and go one day every year to the Open, right. And I saw this guy Pablo Carreño Busto, who is the Spanish. He's the 12th seed, and he played this 18-year-old from Canada, and it was pretty exciting. And he wound up winning. And I don't know anything about him. And Chris McKendry came to say hello. I said, "Who is this guy?" She said, "He's the guy who's going to wind up in the final." final. I've never even heard of him. He's going to be in the final.
It's amazing. And I tell you,
he's one match away from the final and heavily favored to win.
What does help is hearing Chris Evert do a match or hearing the McEnroe brothers do a match. They really do a great job in analyzing golf, especially, again, for the casual fan.
Dad, we talk a lot about sports.
Yes, we do.
Food.
Yep.
And sometimes even health.
That is true.
In a recent survey, the Cleveland Clinic found that today's fathers and sons are talking more about their health than previous generations, but there's still a conversation gap around below-the-belt issues.
Cleveland Clinic wants to remind all men to mention it to their doctor.
Doctors have heard it all before, especially Cleveland Clinic. They're ranked number 1 in urology in the nation.
And they've got answers to 10 questions most men are afraid to ask at clevelandclinic.org/mention it.
Golic is going to make a pick this year every week against the FPI.
The nerds.
The NPI, as Golic calls it.
Nerd.
Maybe I believe we should call it this year Golic versus the Geeks. And it should be pointed out that while you didn't go head-to-head with them, the Geeks are 0-1. The Geeks gave the Kansas City Chiefs only a 25% chance of winning last night.
Way to go, Geeks.
They had New England a 9.5-point favorite last night, and, of course, Kansas City won straight up.
Good thing I didn't pick that.
Well, we both had that game right technically in Vegas. We both said Chiefs with the points.
Yeah.
We both said we thought New England would win, but we didn't think they'd cover.
I pick on .com with other people, and I picked the Patriots.
Okay, but if you're in Vegas, all that matters is that you had Kansas City and the points.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are a couple of really big games on the schedule this weekend, and I'm looking at some of the Nerd Power Index stats on that, but you're going to go head-to-head with them in one game. Which is your game?
One game. Again, me against the Nerd Power Index, the MPI. I am going. They give the Detroit Lions, who are at home, just under a 60% chance of winning at home against the Arizona Cardinals. I am taking the Arizona Cardinals on the road to Detroit, getting the win in Detroit. So that will be I'm going against the Nerds, who give about a 60% chance the Lions getting the win at home. I will take the Arizona Cardinals, and I will be 1-0 against the Nerd or the Geeks. I'm with you. Golic against the Geeks.
To use a parlance that people are more accustomed to, that percentage equates to about a 3.4%, so let's call it a 3.5-point spread. Basically, the FPI is saying the Lions, in their minds, are a 3.5-point favorite. You're taking the Cardinals on the road for a straight-up win.
For the straight-up win. Listen, I could have, the ones that were, 74% chance of winning, 71%, I would have had to take the Browns over the Steelers, the Jets over the Bills. I wasn't willing to go down that road.
There's nothing wrong with your pick. I'm just trying to put it into terms that people will be more accustomed to. Let me give you a quick look at some of the bigger games on this week's schedule. Obviously, any division game to start things off is critical. Maybe none more so than Giants-Cowboys. Huge spotlight game. We'll find out today. Oh, actually, I take it back. Zeke is playing regardless.
Playing week 1.
Sorry. Zeke is playing regardless.
Question in week 1 is Odell, without question. Zeke's playing, so no issue there.
According to the NPI, the Geeks make Dallas basically a 6-point favorite.
I would make him the favorite right now, playing at home and having Zeke on the field.
Giants swept the season series a year ago.
Yes, they did.
We'll see that Giant D against that great Cowboys offensive line.
Great matchup. I just love that matchup, which, of course, as we've said, the Giants won both regular season matchups last year. I do lean toward the Cowboys in this one.
Give me a thumbnail on that game. Why do you think the Cowboys win?
I do think their offense will still continue to roll, that offensive line. They have Zeke out there. That's the matchup looking for against that defense. And then you have the Dallas defense. I know they've certainly been spotty, but how was Odell Beckham? I need to – is he going to play? How is he feeling he's going to play? I thought Brian Billick gave who was on with us yesterday, a great thought process on – how coaches will say if the medical staff says he can play, then I play him, and that's it. Well, he said, and I thought it was great, he'd ask the doctor, how much can he get better between week 1 and week 2? Can he improve 30 to 40% between week 1 and week 2? Then I'm not playing him. I'm going to sit him. They can say, well, he can improve 10 to 20% because he's almost there back full. He can only improve maybe another 10 or 20%. He goes, then I'm going to play him. So I thought that was very interesting, and I don't know where that is with Odell.
He's barely been on the field. He hasn't done anything.
So he hasn't done anything for a while. So to say he's going to play and come back and play with the authority that we know the way he can play, I don't know. And that's their offense. They don't run the ball very well. I know they have other weapons now, but it's Eli to Odell. You're waiting for him to make that play. So that's a big component that we have a question mark about. So I'll lean to the Cowboys.
They have Brandon Marshall, who's also been hurt all through the preseason. Right. Basically, this is a spot where the Giants went in there and won last year. And Zeke had a bad game. Remember, he fumbled a bunch.
His first game, right?
It was his first game. They always play the opening game of the season.
Right.
It's the traditional opener between the Cowboys and the Giants. Why don't we pause on that thought, because there are several really big games. Yeah. We have Seattle going to Green Bay this week. We have Oakland going to Tennessee this week. These are games that could potentially have enormous ramifications late in the season based upon seeding and home field advantage and more, and that's what makes last night's win so huge. The world will come out of last